The Sumerians, flourishing in southern Mesopotamia from roughly 3,500 to 2000 BCE, were among the first civilizations to leave behind extensive written records. Their culture, centered in city-states like Uruk and Nippur, produced a rich cosmology that embedded celestial bodies deeply into religious, political, and agricultural systems. Chief among these celestial entities was the moon, which the Sumerians personified as the god Nana, later known in Akkadian as Sin. Nana was no minor figure. His cult was one of the most widespread and enduring in Mesopotamian history, with his worship continuing through the Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian empires. His imagery roles, the physical infrastructure built in his honor, provide direct evidence of how seriously the moon was regarded, not merely as a light in the sky, but as a divine regulator of life on earth. Nana, the moon god of Earth. Deity Nana was often portrayed as a bearded man, sometimes seated on a throne, and his primary symbol was the crescent moon. His sacred city was Ur, located in what is now southern Iraq. Excavations at Ur by Sir Leonard Woolley in the 1920s revealed the ziggurat of Ur, one of the largest and most iconic temple complexes of the ancient world, dedicated specifically to Nana. The temple archives, unearthed in the form of cuneiform tablets, detail ritual practices, offerings, and calendar regulations all associated with lunar cycles. Nana was referred to as the illuminator of heaven. His monthly waxing and waning were interpreted not just as natural phenomena, but as visible expressions of divine presence and withdrawal. When the moon was new or hidden, it was thought that Nana had gone to the underworld or was in a phase of dormancy. His name, Nana, may derive from a root meaning illuminator, while Sin, his later Akkadian name, possibly stems from a Semitic root word related to brightness. The dual naming convention reflects the linguistic transition from Sumerian to Akkadian as the dominant language of Mesopotamia. Lunar timekeeping and ritual structure. One of the most practical functions of Nana was his association with timekeeping. The Sumerians developed a sophisticated lunar calendar, in which months began with the first visible crescent of the new moon. Each month lasted approximately 29.5 days, alternating between 29 and 30 days in practice. This lunar rhythm was foundational for planning religious festivals, agricultural labor, and legal or civic events. Textual records like the Enuma, Anu, Enlil, a large compendium of astronomical omens compiled from earlier sources, include observations of the moon's behavior, including eclipses, brightness variations, and appearances out of phase as indicators of divine favor or wrath. For instance, a lunar eclipse occurring on the 14th day of the month, the night of the full moon, could be interpreted as an omen signaling political upheaval or impending disaster. The visibility of the moon was so central that dedicated officials, such as scribes of the sky, Kupsaru Zamp, were employed in temple bureaucracies to record lunar sightings. These records ensured that rituals aligned precisely with the moon's phase, particularly in connection with offerings to Nana during the waxing half. When his power was seen to be increasing, Nana's family and celestial context in Sumerian mythology, Nana was the son of Enlil, the air god and chief of the Sumerian pantheon, and his consort Ninlil. This celestial genealogy positioned the moon within a broader cosmological framework where heavenly bodies were conceived as a divine family. Nana's children included Utu Shamash, the sun god, and Inanna, Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, who was associated with the planet Venus. This lineage had practical implications. The appearance of the moon before sunrise, or its conjunction with Venus at dawn or dusk, could be interpreted as symbolic gatherings of this divine family. Texts from the city of Sippar and astronomical tablets from the Assyrian library at Nineveh preserve these interpretations, blending observational astronomy with mythological drama. The royal and political role of non-knockingship in Mesopotamia was closely tied to divine favor, and the moon god Nana was a critical patron of royal legitimacy, especially in Ur, one of the best documented rulers. Ur-Nammu reigned cu. 2112 to 2095 BCE, founder of the Third Dynasty of Ur, claimed direct sanction from Nana in his law code and building inscriptions. The ziggurat of yore was constructed or rebuilt under his reign as a monumental offering to Nana, solidifying the connection between lunar power and terrestrial rule. Later rulers, including Babylonian kings like Nabonidus in the 6th century BCE, revived and emphasized worship of Sin, Nana, even at the expense of other gods like Marduk. Nabonidus's inscriptions explicitly call Sin the king of the gods. And he restored temples in Haran, a northern Mesopotamian center of Sin worship, in an effort to re-establish divine legitimacy through lunar devotion. Artifacts and inscriptions, numerous artifacts provide material evidence of Nana's worship and the moon's role in Sumerian society. Crescent-shaped amulets have been found in graves, likely functioning as protective charms. Boundary stones Kuduru depict Nana's crescent, among other divine emblems. Cylinder seals frequently show the moon crescent in scenes of ritual, kingship, or myth. Lamentation texts, like the lament for your scribe, Nana abandoning his city during times of catastrophe, portraying the moon god as emotionally invested in his people's fate. These texts, composed in the wake of Yor's destruction, dramatize Nana's departure as both a celestial and political disaster. The moon in the Maya world. The Maya civilization, which thrived in Mesoamerica from around 2000 BCE through the 16th century CE, developed one of the most advanced astronomical traditions in the pre-Columbian world. Central to this tradition was the moon, which the Maya saw not only as a heavenly body, but as a divine agent intimately involved in agriculture, fertility, sickness, prophecy, and timekeeping. The Maya tracked the moon's phases with extreme precision, integrated its cycles into their ritual calendar systems, and encoded lunar symbolism into their mythology, art, and temple architecture. The moon was not a passive object of observation. It was a character in a cosmic drama, a bringer of both life and danger, and a tool for predicting events and aligning society with divine order. The moon goddess, Ixcheltha, principal lunar deity of the Maya, was a goddess widely referred to in modern scholarship as Exchel, though her actual name varies across sources and time periods. She is generally depicted as an aged woman with a serpent headdress, often pouring water from a jar, weaving, or bearing the symbols of childbirth. In some contexts, she appears youthful, linking her to the waxing moon and fertility, while the older version is associated with waning death, transformation. Ixchel was associated with menstruation, conception, and midwifery, and was invoked in rituals of pregnancy and childbirth. In codices and murals, she is often shown with moon glyphs or seated within crescent-shaped motifs, indicating her celestial identity. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Maya manuscripts, contains pages dedicated to lunar cycles and eclipse predictions, with figures that scholars identify as Ixchel interacting with moon glyphs, serpents, and waterall symbols of cyclical renewal and potential danger. Lunar calendars and the ritual Yurtha. Maya maintained multiple calendar systems simultaneously, and the moon played an important role in all of them. The two primary systems were the Tucan, a 260-day ritual calendar, the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar. In addition, they tracked the moon using the lunar series, a set of glyphs found in inscriptions on monuments that recorded the moon's age, i.e. how many days since the last new moon, its position in its 29.5-day cycle, and its place within 6-month intervals that corresponded to eclipses. This system allowed the Maya to predict lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy. The Dresden Codex, for instance, includes tables that align lunar phases and eclipses over hundreds of years, enabling priests and astronomer scribes to anticipate ritually dangerous periods. These calculations were tied to divination and societal decisions, such as when to wage war, plant crops, or install kings. Eclipses as celestial battles. Lunar eclipses were viewed as dangerous supernatural events. Maya mythology portrayed eclipses as attacks on the moon by serpents, jaguars, or other sky creatures. In some narratives, the moon goddess herself was wounded, devoured, or poisoned. It required offerings or intervention to be restored. During lunar eclipses, it was common for communities to engage in noise-making rituals, banging drums, shouting, or firing arrows into the sky to scare away the creature threatening the moon. These practices are documented in colonial period accounts that preserve remnants of pre-Hispanic traditions. Eclipses were also associated with omens and death. In classic period inscriptions, eclipses coincide with references to royal deaths, captives, or calamities, suggesting that the moon's vulnerability mirrored human vulnerability during periods of cosmic imbalance. Lunar symbolism and kingship. A mythomoon was sometimes linked with royal women in Maya art and politics. Queens and noblewomen are depicted with lunar regalia, seated on thrones shaped like crescent glyphs, or associated with moon-related titles. The moon's cycle of waning and rebirth symbolized dynastic continuity, with queens bearing divine authority to renew lineages through blood and fertility. In the Papal VA, the Keish Maya mythological text compiled post-conquest, but reflecting older oral traditions. There are no direct mentions of the moon goddess, but lunar imagery appears in stories of twins, resurrection, and sacrifice. The twin heroes Hunahpu and Xbalanque are sometimes interpreted as symbolic analogues of the sun and moon, one active and bright, the other hidden and mysterious. Monuments at Copan, Palenque, and Yaxchilan contain stelae altars where the moon's phase is explicitly recorded, often aligned with important births, deaths, or accession events. This emphasis on celestial timing reinforced the idea that divine favor followed celestial patterns, and that kings ruled in sync with lunar as well as solar power. Lunar motifs in art and architecture moon symbolism pervaded Maya art. Common motifs include crescent-shaped headdresses worn by gods, animals and humans moon glyphs integrated into pottery, murals, and codex pages, images of a rabbit inside the moon. A motif still common in modern Mesoamerican folklore, the idea of a moon rabbit believed to be pounding medicine or food appears in Dresden and Madrid codices, linking the moon to domestic labor, sustenance, and healing. Temples and observatories, such as the El Caracal at Chichén Itzá, show architectural alignments that likely tracked both solar and lunar events. Some structures have window openings oriented to full moon risings, suggesting deliberate design for ritual or observational purposes. Women. Water and the moon. The moon's association with water was particularly important to the Maya Ixchel, as water pourer symbolized rain, flood, and fertility. And her connection to the moon reinforced the belief that lunar phases influenced rainfall patterns, the flow of rivers, and the timing of planting and harvesting in some Maya villages. Lunar cycles were linked to water spirits or cenote rituals, with full moons being the ideal time to offer flowers, jade, or incense to the spirits thought to dwell in natural wells and caves. Modern Maya descendant communities in Guatemala, Chiapas, and the Yucatan still retain lunar agricultural lore, much of which is thought to derive from pre-Columbian lunar calendars and fertility beliefs. The moon in Inuit life and thought. Among the Inuit peoples of the Arctic regions, including northern Canada, Alaska, and Greenland, the moon occupies a prominent place in cosmology, oral storytelling, and survival-based practices. In a landscape dominated by extreme cold, seasonal darkness, and environmental cycles, celestial bodies were not only markers of time but spiritual presences embedded in mythic narratives. The moon in Inuit cosmology is typically masculine, in contrast to many other ancient cultures. He is known by different names depending on the region, but a common figure across Arctic mythology is Anningat, the moon spirit or god who chases his sister, the sun, across the sky in a never-ending celestial pursuit. This mythological framing explains both the movement of the moon and its phases, while also offering metaphorical explanations for hunger, light, death, and the social order of gender and behavior. In Inuit tradition, the moon was not distant. It was part of daily life, Its presence was felt in the timing of hunts, the behavior of animals, and the perception of the human soul. Anningan and the chasing moon. In one widely told version of the myth, Anningan and his sister Melina, the sun, lived in the same village. One day, after an argument, or in darker versions, a violent encounter, Melina fled across the sky. Anningan chased her, becoming the moon. This chase explains the diurnal cycle, why the sun and moon rarely appear in the sky together, and why they follow similar paths. But the myth goes deeper. Anningan, in his pursuit, is said to grow thin, and then fat again, mirroring the lunar phases. According to oral tradition, he forgets to eat during his long run and becomes emaciated waning moon, then returns to health waxing moon before the cycle repeats. In some Greenlandic versions, the story includes Anningan's torch burning low, leaving the world in darkness, and Melina's torch reigniting the day, an echo of seasonal shifts in sunlight which are extreme in Arctic regions. In the darkest months, when the sun may not rise at all, the moon becomes the primary source of light, making its mythological importance even greater. Gender and duality in Inuit cosmology. The masculine identity of the moon and the feminine identity of the sun is reversed from many other cultural systems. This inversion reflects deeper Inuit cultural logic surrounding gender roles, environmental dualism, and the division of labor. The sun is consistent, powerful, nurturing qualities associated with women's roles in traditional Inuit society, such as caring for children and preparing food. The moon, ever-changing, pursuing, and sometimes unreliable, embodies masculine restlessness, aligned with hunting, danger, and the cold. In some narratives, the moon becomes a kind of cosmic judge, watching over behavior, especially at night. Inuit elders in historical ethnographies, for example, Rasmussen, 1929, reported that the moon was believed to see improper acts, especially those involving taboo violations, and punish the guilty with bad weather, sickness, or failed hunts. The moon and hunting cycles. Hunting in the Arctic often took place at night or during months of partial darkness, making the moon's light essential for navigation, visibility, and safety. Inuit hunters used the brightness and position of the moon to determine the best time to hunt nocturnal prey like seals. The location of reflective ice or open water, the likelihood of changing weather patterns, moonlight on snow creates distinct visual textures, and experienced hunters could read these 4 clues about animal tracks, den entrances, or danger zones. The full moon, providing the clearest visibility, was associated with activity and abundance, while the new moon, a time of darkness, was one for caution. In some oral traditions, the moon's glow on ice was interpreted as a sign of blessing or guidance from ancestors, whose spirits were said to dwell in the sky or pass through the moon's realm after death. Lunar halos and weather. Prediction. Inuit oral knowledge includes observations of lunar halos, circular light patterns around the moon caused by ice crystals in the atmosphere. These halos were, and are, still used to predict storms and shifting weather conditions. A bright halo meant moisture in the air and often foretold snow or wind within a day or two. Multiple concentric rings were considered rare and powerful, sometimes interpreted as omens or signs from spirit beings. This weather forecasting ability, passed down through generations, illustrates how the moon was not merely a mystical figure, but a practical environmental indicator. The moon and the soul, the moon, also played a role in Inuit beliefs about death and the soul. In some traditions, after death, the soul of the deceased could travel to different layers of the sky, including the realm of the moon. The phases of the moon were sometimes thought to represent the journey of souls, full moon as the peak of spiritual presence, new moon as the entry into darkness or rebirth. Shamanic visions or trance journeys practiced by the Angkor or Inuit spiritual specialists were sometimes said to include meetings with celestial beings, including the moon spirit. These journeys were not symbolic, but were understood as actual interactions with forces that shaped the weather, the hunt, and community health. Material culture and art carvings, masks, and amulets from pre-contact and early contact Inuit cultures often include crescent shapes, stylized faces of the moon, or chase scenes showing a male figure following a female across the sky. In some regions, tattooing traditions for women included lunar symbols meant to invoke protection, fertility, or celestial connection. Moon iconography also appears in drum dance songs, a central form of communal expression. Songs composed during winter moons sometimes reference the moon's eye, mouth, or breath, further emphasizing its living presence. The moon in Greek myth, religion, and rational inquiry in classical Greece. The moon occupied a central place in myth, ritual, and scientific speculation. It was not just an object in the sky, but a personified deity, a cosmic clock, and a puzzle. For natural philosophers, Greek thought is unique in its dual approach. While mythology personified the moon as Selene and later associated it with Artemis, philosophers from the 6th century BCE onward developed naturalistic explanations for lunar behavior, proposing that the moon was a physical body, reflecting light and casting shadows. This convergence of mythic embodiment and scientific inquiry makes the Greek view of the moon both richly symbolic and remarkably progressive. The moon was seen as a powerful feminine force, a calendar regulator, a bringer of tides and dreams, and eventually an object of rational observation. Selene, the moon personified the earliest and most prominent lunar deity in Greek religion, was Selene, whose name literally means the bright one. She was the daughter of the Titans Hyperion and Theia, and the sister of Helios, the sun, and Eos, the dawn. This celestial family structure was consistent with Greek cosmological thinking, placing the moon as a counterpart to both the day and night transitions. Selene was typically depicted as a beautiful woman with a crescent moon on her head, often driving a silver chariot pulled by white horses across the night sky. Literary sources such as Homer's hymn to Selene, Hesiod's Theogony, and later Roman poets like Ovid preserve her mythology. She was considered gentle, radiant, and ever-watching, and was believed to illuminate the earth for travelers and protect lovers and children under her silver glow. One of the most famous myths involving Selene is her love for the mortal shepherd, Endymion, whom she placed into eternal sleep so she could visit him every night. The myth reflected both the cyclical nature of the moon's appearance and its role as a watchful, passive observer of the world below, Artemis, and the lunar shift over time. Especially by the 5th century BCE, Artemis, originally the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and chastity, became syncretized with Selene. This merging likely reflected the shifting focus of public worship and a growing connection between the female divine and the moon's fertility symbolism. Artemis retained her traditional identity as a protector of animals and young women, but her association with the moon added cosmic and temporal dimensions. She became not just a huntress, but a guardian of the night, watching over women during childbirth and overseeing monthly cycles, menstruation, harvest, and ritual purity. This transition is reflected in classical sculpture and vase painting, where Artemis is often depicted with a crescent diadem. Inscriptions and oracles from temples at Delos, Ephesus, and Brauron indicate lunar timing and festival practices dedicated to Artemis, particularly during the full moon, when sacrifices and dances were held in her honor. The moon, in Greek timekeeping, Greeks used a lunisolar calendar, in which each month began with the first visible crescent moon. The word min, munu, meaning month, is directly related to min munu neta, a word for moon. The year was divided into 12 lunar months, of either 29 or 30 days, totaling 354 days shorter than the solar year. To reconcile this difference, an extra month was occasionally inserted in a process called intercalation, overseen by civic or religious officials. Important festivals, such as the Panathenaea, Thargelia, and Delia, were timed according to lunar cycles. For example, full moons were associated with heightened divine presence, and new moons were considered auspicious moments for renewal, purification, or civic announcements. The city of Athens maintained one of the most sophisticated lunar calendars, in the ancient world, known from surviving inscriptions and documents like the Athenian fasci and references in plays by Aristophanes. The phases of the moon were engraved on public buildings and observed by stat-appointed priests known as neokoroi. Philosophical theories and lunar observation, beginning in the 6th century BCE. The Greek thinkers began applying rational thought to celestial phenomena, and the moon became a central object of inquiry. Anaxagoras c. 500 to 428 BCE proposed that the moon was an Earth-like body, cold and rocky, that reflected sunlight, rather than producing its own glow. He was also one of the first to explain solar and lunar eclipses as shadows cast by or upon the moon. Democritus c. 462–370 BCE speculated that the dark areas on the moon were valleys or plains, hinting at topographical features long before a telescopic confirmation. Aristarchus of Samos c. 310–230 BCE used geometry and lunar eclipses to estimate the size and distance of the moon relative to Earth, achieving results that were remarkably close to modern values for his time. These observations were all conducted without telescopes, using Barai geometry, shadow tracking, and eclipse data, recorded meticulously by scholars and referenced by later astronomers, including Ptolemy and Hipparchus. Moon worship, magic, and the mysteries. In addition to formal worship, the moon played a prominent role in folk rituals, mystery cults, and magic. The full moon was often invoked in love spells, agricultural rites, and divination practices. Magical papyri from the Hellenistic period contain invocations to Selene and Artemis, often blending the two figures into a composite lunar goddess associated with night power and hidden knowledge. Lunar eclipses were widely feared. Writers such as Pliny the Elder and Plutarch, while Roman, echo earlier Greek superstitions that linked eclipses to omens, divine warnings, or disturbances in cosmic order. In practical terms, eclipses were often interpreted through the lens of astrology, a field that matured in the Hellenistic period by absorbing Babylonian techniques and applying Greek rational frameworks. Temples and sacred spaces, lunar alignments, appear in Greek temples, particularly those associated with Artemis. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, is likely designed to reflect both solar and lunar cycles. With its axial plan corresponding to celestial events, other temples, such as those at Delos' birthplace of Artemis and Apollo, hosted nighttime festivals and full moon rituals, confirmed by archaeological evidence of torchlight processions, lunar iconography, and ritual calendars carved in stone. The moon's place in Egyptian cosmology enchant Egyptian culture. It's flourishing for over 3 millennia along the Nile River. It's developed an intricate belief system in which celestial bodies were regarded as both divine forces and regulators of the cosmic order. The moon, while not as dominant as the sun in state-sponsored religious symbolism, played a vital and nuanced role. Egyptian thought associated the moon with multiple deities, most prominently Thoth, the god of writing, wisdom, and measurement, and in funerary contexts with Osiris, the lord of the afterlife and resurrection. The moon's phases were used for reckoning time, structuring rituals, aligning temple ceremonies, and tracking the agricultural cycle. It was both a celestial clock and a spiritual mirror, reflecting the divine balance that Egyptian society sought to maintain in all aspects of life. Thoth, the lunar god of measurement and magic, the most consistent lunar deity in ancient Egypt, was Thoth Jehuti, who was frequently depicted as a man with the head of an ibis, or occasionally as a baboon, both animals linked with the moon. His iconography sometimes includes a lunar disk above his head or a crescent moon cradling a full disk, signifying his celestial domain. Thoth's role was fundamentally that of a cosmic regulator. He was the divine scribe who measured the heavens, recorded the fates of humans, and kept the records of the gods. In this function, Thoth became closely tied to the moon, which the Egyptians observed as a regular, predictable celestial rhythm. In multiple texts, Thoth is referred to as he who reckons the heavens and lord of time. Evidence from coffin texts, pyramid texts, and New Kingdom tomb inscriptions supports this role. For example, the pyramid text Utterance 302 describe Thoth as one who makes the days to go right, indicating a timekeeping function. He was believed to have established the calendar and made sense of the lunar cycle in a world that constantly teetered between order mat and chaos opening parenthesis, Ifa, closing parenthesis. The Egyptian calendar and lunar cycles Egyptians operated a dual calendar system, one solar 365 days, divided into 12 months of 30 days plus 5 epigomenal days, and another lunar, used especially in religious contexts. The lunar calendar tracked the moon's phases, particularly the new moon and full moon, to determine festival dates and ritual alignments. While the civil calendar drifted due to its lack of leap years, the lunar calendar was adjusted monthly based on direct observation in the temple of Edfu. Inscriptions show detailed attention to the lunar month structure. The waxing half was considered auspicious, while the waning half was linked with decline or disorder. Thoth was believed to mediate this cycle, maintaining equilibrium, according to inscriptions at Edfu and Dinera. Thoth restored the Eye of Horus, a symbol sometimes equated with the moon, after it had been damaged in cosmic battle. This act of repair mirrored the moon's monthly rebirth. Thoth and lunar mathematical papyrus, such as the Rind mathematical papyrus Q. 1550 BCE, and religious texts reveal an early understanding of lunar fractions. The Eye of Horus was divided into 6 parts, -1 half, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 1/64, which together made 63 64ths. This slightly incomplete total symbolized the damaged eye and was reconciled by Thoth, who restored the missing 1/64th to make the whole, reflecting a mythic explanation for the moon's cyclical renewal. This mathematical metaphor illustrates how the moon was not only viewed spiritually, but was also integrated into theoretical thinking about proportionality, measurement, and cosmic balance. Osiris, the moon, and the moon's disappearance and reappearance each month, was linked with the death and resurrection of Osiris, the god of the underworld. In funerary texts and temple rituals, the moon's dying phase, the period of darkness around the new moon, is metaphorically connected with Osiris's dismemberment and descent into the underworld. In some New Kingdom tombs, particularly in the Valley of the Kings, wall scenes depict Osiris rising with the moon, reborn each month. The association of Osiris with the crescent moon as a boat, the so-called night bark, appears in Book of the Dead spell 135, which describes the deceased sailing in the divine boat of millions of years led by lunar deities. In this way, the moon served as both a clock and a ferry, marking the passage of time and symbolizing the journey from death to rebirth. The ancient Egyptians believed that the dead could follow the moon's path through the sky to be rejuvenated, just as Osiris was. Festivals and ritual alignments, specific festivals, such as the Feast of the New Moon, were observed in multiple temples. The beautiful Festival of the Valley, held in Thebes during the New Kingdom, occurred near the new moon and involved rituals to renew the souls of the dead and celebrate divine harmony between the sun, moon, and earth at the Temple of Khonsu. In Karnak, dedicated to the child moon god Khonsu, sometimes considered the youthful aspect of Thoth, inscriptions record offerings made on specific lunar dates. In the deity's association with night, healing, and celestial movement, Khonsu's name literally means traveler, derived from the verb canes to cross, a reference to the moon's movement across the sky. He was depicted with a sidelock of youth and a lunar disk above his head, reinforcing his identification with the moon in its transitional and cyclical roles. Artistic and architectural alignments, lunar symbolism was incorporated into temple architecture and tomb design, particularly through light and shadow. At Dendera and Philae, ceremonial rooms were aligned so that moonlight would fall on sacred altars during particular nights of the month. In some cases, inscriptions specifically instruct priests to observe the rising moon before performing nocturnal rituals. Statuary of Thoth, Osiris, and Khonsu frequently included lunar emblems. Votive steely amulets and coffins often bore images of the crescent moon with offerings, invoking its protective and restorative powers during the night journey of the soul.